The war drums were still echoing when the humans arrived. Not with weapons drawn, not yet, but with briefcases, translators, and a smile that didn't quite reach their eyes. The Galactic Concord had expected a delegation of fragile bipeds begging for survival. Instead, Earth's representatives strolled into the High Council chamber as if they owned the place. Their lead envoy wore a tailored suit in a shade of gray so sharp it could have sliced through treaties. He introduced himself with a bow that was polite enough to be disarming, but not so deep it looked subservient. "Ambassador Elias Monroe, United Earth Directorate," he said warmly. "We're here to discuss peace." It sounded harmless. But even the word peace carried weight when spoken with that careful, deliberate tone, the sort of tone predators use when circling a nervous herd. The Concord was divided. Some species considered humanity a minor nuisance. Young, loud, always improvising, never sticking to protocol. Others whispered rumors of skirmishes where human fleets fought like cornered wolves and left nothing standing. The Council had hoped this summit would put those fears to rest. But then Elias smiled again. A dangerous smile, the kind that suggested peace was optional. The Quavathi delegate, a crystalline being whose form flickered with shifting light, clicked irritably. "Your ships, why are they here?" The humans hadn't hidden them. In orbit above the Concord capital spun an entire fleet, their hulls painted a dull gray that caught the sun like knives. Officially, they were escorts. Unofficially, they were a reminder. "Standard procedure," Elias replied smoothly. "Traveling across half a galaxy is dangerous. Pirates, accidents, solar flares, you understand." The insectoid Thara delegate let out a chittering hiss. "You expect us to believe 50 warships are here for insurance?" Elias tilted his head, pretending to consider. "Well, the insurance premiums are outrageous. You'd be amazed what they charge when your species has a reputation." He leaned forward, lowering his voice just enough to force everyone to lean in. "We do hope no accidents occur." It was a threat disguised as courtesy. Perfectly polite, perfectly lethal. The council chamber grew heavy with silence. Aliens exchanged nervous glances. The humans were newcomers to the galactic stage, yet somehow they had flipped the entire tone of the meeting within minutes. The Valen matriarch, wise and weary, finally spoke. Her voice was a deep rumble, like shifting stone. "You claim to seek peace, yet you surround our skies with iron. That is not peace. That is intimidation." Elias spread his hands as if wounded. "Madam, you mistake us. Peace is our sincerest desire. The ships are merely punctuation. After all, treaties without enforcement are just very expensive paper." He said it so kindly that half the chamber missed the blade in his words. The other half heard it clearly, and shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The truth was this: the Concord had invited Earth out of desperation. Centuries of cold wars had frayed into hot ones. Border skirmishes grew bloodier every cycle. Resources dwindled. Every peace negotiation collapsed under the weight of old grudges. Someone had suggested inviting the humans, those unpredictable newcomers who'd never lost a fight they committed to. Perhaps Earth could mediate. Perhaps they could be controlled. Instead, Earth had walked in holding all the cards. The negotiations began with formalities. Each species aired grievances, ancient rivalries laid bare. The humans listened patiently. Elias took notes with an old-fashioned pen, the scratching sound almost comically out of place in a chamber filled with holographic interfaces. He nodded, asked clarifying questions, and disarmed them with little jokes. When the Othran complained of trade blockades, Elias sighed sympathetically. "That reminds me of when my neighbor wouldn't return my lawnmower. These things escalate quickly if you let them." When the Shalkari bemoaned raids along their borders, he raised his brows. "Unacceptable. Where we come from, even pirates have standards." The aliens didn't always understand the humor, but they understood the calm. The humans didn't rise to bait, didn't flinch when threatened. They smiled, they nodded, and beneath it all was the ever-present awareness that a fleet waited overhead. Hours passed. Frustrations boiled. Delegates shouted, stormed, postured. Elias remained steady, offering suggestions couched in gentle tones. Perhaps a trade corridor monitored by neutral parties? Perhaps reparations exchanged through a third party? Perhaps you'd both benefit from not trying to strangle each other every century? Bit by bit, the Council realized what was happening. The humans weren't just mediating, they were steering. With every polite interruption, every disarming remark, Earth shaped the terms. And the terrifying part was that it worked. Species who hadn't agreed on a single detail in decades suddenly found themselves nodding along, if only to avoid disappointing that calm, steady voice. By the end of the first session, tentative outlines of treaties had formed. Not binding yet, but enough to spark whispers of possibility. The matriarch studied Elias with wary respect. Your people are unusual. We expected warriors. Instead, we find diplomats with teeth. Elias smiled, softer this time. We've learned diplomacy the hard way, madam. Back home, every peace treaty was written in ink, while the soldiers waited just outside the door. It taught us balance. It was the most honest thing he'd said all day. The council adjourned for the evening. Delegates shuffled out, muttering. Some were impressed, others unsettled. All were aware that the humans had tilted the board in a single session. When the chamber was empty, Elias remained, studying the star map projected across the room. His aide, a young officer named Ruiz, approached quietly. They're starting to crack, Ruiz murmured. Elias didn't look away from the map. Of course they are. They've been fighting for centuries without resolution. All they needed was a push. Ruiz hesitated. And the fleet. Elias finally turned, his smile fading into something sharper. The fleet is the push. Treaties alone don't keep peace. Fear does. Respect, if you want to dress it up. Outside, in the vast dark, human ships drifted in perfect formation. Their engines glowed faintly, a silent reminder that Earth's reach now extended to the Concorde's very heart. The humans had come for peace. But peace, as Elias understood, was never given. It was imposed. And tomorrow, the Council would realize just how far Earth was willing to go. By morning, rumors had spread through the Concorde capital like wildfire. The humans hadn't moved their ships during the night. Not a single vessel adjusted orbit. Not a single thruster flickered. 50 warships sat perfectly still above the planet, silent as statues, radiating patience in a way that was somehow more terrifying than aggression. Delegates arrived at the council chamber tense and restless. Some wanted the humans gone, some wanted them sanctioned, and a few quietly admitted the thought they dared not say aloud. Perhaps Earth was exactly what the galaxy needed. Elias Monroe arrived precisely on time, carrying nothing more than his leather-bound folder and that same unflappable smile. He greeted each alien as if they were old friends, shaking appendages, bowing to those who bowed, even mimicking the odd ear flutter of the Iron ambassador. The mimicry was imperfect, but the attempt was disarming. Ambassador Monroe, the crystalline Quavathi delegate, said sharply, "Your fleet remains in orbit. We demand they withdraw to neutral space before negotiations continue." Elias set his folder neatly on the table. "Withdraw? I'm afraid that would be irresponsible. We can't very well mediate peace if our own safety isn't assured, can we?" "You are not in danger," the Quavathi snapped, facets glowing angrily. Elias raised an eyebrow. "Yesterday half this chamber threatened war within the first hour. Forgive me if I don't take your assurances as insurance." The remark drew a ripple of laughter from some species and furious silence from others. The human envoy leaned back, folding his hands, perfectly comfortable under the weight of alien stares. The Shalkari delegate, her chitin armor gleaming, clicked mandibles thoughtfully. Let us not dwell on the fleet. Let us focus on the treaties. Humans claim neutrality. Prove it. Elias nodded agreeably. Of course. Let's begin with trade. Who here is prepared to reduce tariffs in exchange for access to Earth's agricultural exports? The chamber stilled. Everyone had heard of Earth's bounty. Grains that grew in poor soil, fruits engineered to last months without spoilage, seeds adapted to a dozen climates. For war-torn systems, food was leverage more powerful than fleets. One by one, species raised objections, counteroffers, conditions. Elias let them argue, occasionally steering with a question. Would you prefer famine or compromise? Is starving your neighbor truly more profitable than selling to them? Perhaps you should taste our bread before you condemn it. Within an hour, two rival blocs that hadn't spoken civilly in decades were bickering over shipping quotas instead of missiles. The Valen matriarch, who had seen more centuries than most empires lasted, rumbled in quiet awe. You herd us like livestock, human. And somehow we follow. Elias inclined his head. We prefer the term guidance. Livestock has such unfortunate connotations. The matriarch's eyes narrowed. Do not think we fail to see the chains beneath your courtesy. Elias only smiled. Chains? No, madam. Options. Chains imply you can't move. We are offering you the freedom to choose survival. The room chilled at the phrasing. Freedom to choose survival. It was the most human of bargains. Agree to the deal, or the alternative speaks for itself. As the session dragged on, more species began to realize the shape of the trap. The humans were never simply mediating. They were inserting themselves as the pivot point of every agreement, the guarantor of every corridor, the arbiter of every trade route. Earth was not offering peace. Earth was building indispensability. The insectoid Thara slammed a clawed fist on the table. This is colonization by contract. You bind us with words instead of weapons. Elias looked up mildly. Is that worse than binding each other with warships? We're only suggesting agreements you yourselves claim to want. If the medicine tastes bitter, perhaps it is because the illness is so deep. The words hit harder than shouted threats. The council fell into a stunned silence, each delegate unwilling to admit that the human was right. Only the Quavathi broke the quiet, voice trembling with fury. You come here pretending to save us. In truth, you tighten your grip. What happens if we refuse? Elias's smile thinned. He leaned forward just enough for his words to cut through the air like a scalpel. If you refuse, nothing happens at all. You return to war. You burn your worlds. You waste generations. And my people. He tapped his folder softly. We go home. We build higher walls. We let the galaxy devour itself. Do you want that? It was not a threat. It was worse. It was indifference. The silence that followed was thicker than smoke. Every species in the chamber understood. Earth had the luxury of walking away. The Concord did not. The day's talks ended with more progress than any previous summit in a century. Trade corridors mapped, reparations drafted, ceasefires outlined. Delegates left exhausted and unsettled, muttering about human arrogance but secretly marveling at human results. When the chamber emptied again, Elias remained behind, gazing up at the holographic star map. His aide Ruiz joined him, voice low. They're folding faster than expected. Elias didn't look away. They're desperate. Desperation makes compromise look like salvation. Ruiz hesitated. Sir, some of them suspect. Good, Elias said softly. Suspicion keeps them cautious. Fear keeps them united. By the time they realize, it will be too late. Above, in the void, the fleet remained still. But behind their gray hulls, systems stirred, long-range comms flashing, encryption cycling, logistics aligning. The ships weren't just waiting. They were preparing. The third day began with whispers. Delegates arrived with rumors half-formed and none comforting. Some swore they'd intercepted encrypted transmissions from the human fleet, coded bursts that didn't match standard escort patterns. Others insisted they had seen the faint shimmer of drones drifting away from the warships like sparks from a fire. None of it was confirmed. All of it was terrifying. When Elias Monroe entered the council chamber, he looked as rested as if he'd spent the night in a spa. He carried the same leather folder, the same unflappable calm, the same faint smile. The contrast between his serenity and the alien's visible unease was deliberate, and he knew it. "Shall we continue?" Elias said pleasantly, as if he were opening a business luncheon rather than holding the galaxy's future hostage. The Quavathi delegate snapped immediately, voice sharp as breaking glass. "We demand answers. Your ships broadcast in frequencies we cannot trace. What are they doing?" Elias blinked, then chuckled lightly. "Communicating. Fleets do that, you know. Otherwise the traffic jams get unbearable." No one laughed. The insectoid Thara leaned forward, mandibles twitching. "Do not mock us, human. We see movements. Drones, perhaps. Spies. Is this how you wage peace, by surrounding us?" Elias's expression softened into something almost paternal. "My dear friend, you mistake prudence for hostility. Every power in this chamber fields scouts and spies. Are humans expected to come blindfolded while the rest of you peek through every keyhole?" The words landed too easily. Several delegates looked away, guilty. The Concord had been a nest of espionage for centuries. Humanity had simply admitted it aloud. The Valen matriarch rumbled, heavy with age. "Your tongue is clever, human. But clever tongues do not still weapons. Your fleet unnerves us." Elias met her ancient gaze. "That is its purpose." The chamber froze. There it was, no euphemism, no sidestep, no joke. Just a blade laid gently on the table. Elias folded his hands. "Your fleets number in the thousands. Your wars span systems. And yet in centuries you have accomplished nothing but ashes. You fear my 50 ships? Good. Fear is the first step to discipline. Without discipline, peace is impossible." He said it gently, but the chill it left behind was absolute. The Arthran delegate, always the loudest voice, slammed a fist on the table. "We invited you as mediators, not masters." Elias inclined his head, still calm. "And you received both." "You're welcome." The Arthran seethed, but said no more. Talk stumbled forward, less cooperative now, but still tethered by necessity. The humans continued weaving themselves into every solution: transport guarantees, resource arbitrations, patrol oversight. Each clause made Earth the indispensable hinge. It was the Thara who finally broke the illusion of calm. Halfway through negotiations, their delegate hissed furiously and slammed a claw down on the table. "Enough. You speak of peace, yet your fleet arms itself above our skies. Do you think we do not see? Reactor outputs climbing, weapons warmed. Why?" That sparked chaos. Delegates shouted, demanded explanations, threatened to walk out. Even the matriarch's steady rumble could not restore order. All eyes turned to Elias. For the first time, he rose from his seat. Slowly, deliberately, he smoothed his suit jacket as if preparing to deliver a keynote rather than face down 20 alien governments. "Our fleet prepares," Elias said softly, "because preparation is the surest guarantee of peace. If you doubt this, look to your own histories. How many ceasefires crumbled because one side blinked first? How many innocents died because ships sat idle until it was too late?" He began to walk slowly around the table, voice steady, carrying like a teacher addressing restless students. "Humans learned long ago, The time to ready the fire hose is before the flames spread, not after. You call it intimidation. We call it foresight. The chamber was silent but for his footsteps. The calm cadence of his voice unnerved them more than shouting ever could. And, Elias added, almost as an afterthought, should hostilities resume here, we would prefer to be prepared. For our own safety. It was an excuse, but no one believed it. Everyone understood, those warships weren't shields. They were hammers. The session collapsed into recess. Delegates stormed out, some to call their governments, others to argue with aides. A few glanced nervously upward, as if the fleet's shadows reached all the way into the chamber. Elias remained behind, studying the star map once more. His aide Ruiz joined him, voice hushed. They're close to breaking. Some of them will bolt. Let them, Elias replied. Fear spreads faster than words. Once one flees, the others will see isolation closing in. They'll cling to us harder. Ruiz hesitated. And the fleet? Are we really arming systems? Elias gave him a look, half amusement, half warning. Ruiz, the fleet was armed before we arrived. We don't half-step into negotiations. We bring options. In orbit, something shifted. 50 warships moved for the first time, not toward the planet but into a new, tighter formation. Hulls gleamed as they aligned with precision only possible through months of rehearsal. From the ground, the formation looked less like escorts and more like a wall. Delegates and civilians alike stared skyward as the shapes locked into place. A message written not in words, but in geometry. Earth was ready, waiting, watching. And somewhere deep in the silence of space, systems hummed awake that no alien sensor could fully identify. The galaxy had asked Earth for peace. Now it began to see what Earth meant by the word. By the fourth day, no one pretended the fleet was merely escort. The alien delegates arrived under guard, their entourages whispering frantically. Reports spread of human drones gliding just beyond sensor range, of coded signals bouncing between warships in patterns too complex to decipher. The sky itself had become a reminder. Gray hulks hanging above, patient as wolves, waiting for weakness. Inside the council chamber, tension boiled. The Quavathi delegate flickered furiously. This is no negotiation, it is occupation. The Thara hissed in agreement. They have encircled us. We are prisoners in our own capital. Others argue the opposite, insisting Earth was salvation, that no species had ever forced the Concord to speak with such honesty. But even those voices shook with unease. Elias Monroe entered last, calm as ever. He set his folder on the table, smoothed his tie, and smiled that same practiced smile. "Good morning," he said cheerfully. "I trust you all slept." "Ah, no, clearly not." "Well, let us continue." "Enough games, human," snapped the Shalkari, claws tapping the table. "Tell us your true purpose. Why are you here?" Elias raised his brows, almost amused. "To broker peace, of course. And I must say, it's going splendidly. Ceasefire outlines. Trade corridors. Reparations. Progress you yourselves failed to achieve in centuries." The Valen matriarch rumbled low. "Progress achieved only because your fleet looms above us. Remove it, and your words crumble." Elias leaned forward, voice velvet but edged. "Madam, if the presence of peacekeepers is the only thing preventing you from tearing each other apart, perhaps the problem is not the peacekeepers." That silenced them for a moment, but only a moment. The Quavathi flared brighter. "We will not be chained by your iron. Withdraw your ships or face the Concord's combined might." The chamber erupted. Shouts, threats, fists slammed against tables. Some demanded human withdrawal, others begged them to stay. Elias let the chaos rage for a minute, watching with the patient interest of a biologist observing lab rats. Then, softly but firmly, he spoke. "Sit down. The words weren't loud, but they carried. Delegates froze, unsettled by the sudden absence of charm. Elias's smile returned, smaller now, sharper. You ask why we are here. Very well. You deserve honesty. Earth did not come because we believed in your peace. Earth came because we no longer trusted you to survive without burning the galaxy down. You've proven yourselves incapable of restraint. He tapped his folder, and a holographic projection bloomed above the table. Maps, casualty figures, resource losses from centuries of Concord wars. You've squandered prosperity, destroyed generations, poisoned entire systems. Over borders you redraw every century. And so, you asked for peace. He looked around the chamber, eyes glinting. We intend to give it to you. The Shalkari delegate hissed. At the point of a cannon. At the weight of a treaty, Elias corrected, still gentle. But yes, enforced by cannons, should you test them. He gestured to the map again. New overlays appeared. Proposed patrol zones, resource allocations, shipping corridors. Every line had one common factor. All ran through Earth. You think we came as mediators, Elias continued. We came as architects. These treaties are not suggestions. They are blueprints. And Earth will be the keystone. The chamber erupted again, but this time Elias raised a hand and cut through the noise with 2 words. Look up. Confused, some delegates hesitated before activating comms to outside feeds. The view of the fleet filled the chamber's holographic ceiling. The 50 warships had moved again. This time, they weren't forming a wall. They were forming a cage, an orbital lattice locking around the Concord's capital world. Energy signatures flared as shields overlapped, creating a net no fleet could pierce without catastrophic losses. The aliens stared upward, horrified. Elias's voice was almost kind. Do not mistake this for conquest. If Earth wanted your submission, we would have come with armies. This is not a leash. It is a brace. Your wars have broken too many bones. Someone must hold them steady while they heal. The matriarch's ancient voice shook with anger. You dare bind the galaxy? Elias met her gaze calmly. We dare prevent its funeral. Silence. Heavy. Absolute. Finally, the Arthurian delegate spat. And if we refuse? Elias smiled one last time, the kind of smile predators give before the final strike. Then you will find yourselves free. Free to fight, free to burn, free to collapse. And when you come begging again, Earth will not answer. Because this fleet is only the first. Behind it waits another. And another. We did not come to request your cooperation. We came to make your wars obsolete. He closed his folder. Peace, ladies and gentlemen, is no longer optional. It is policy. No one spoke. Above, the fleet's lattice tightened, glowing faintly against the planet's skies. A cage, a shield, a promise. Elias adjusted his cufflinks, tone once again light and courteous. Now, shall we sign?